Battle of Chickamauga was fought on September 18th through 20th, 1863, and was the first major battle of the Civil War fought in Georgia in the area then known as Crawfish Springs. After the Civil War, the town began to grow during the Reconstruction period. In the summer of 1874, after, quote, laying by time, the Methodist Church in Chickamauga was formed under a brush arbor. Services were organized by Mr. J.M. Lee and Mr. Leet. The original church building shared space with the Masonic Lodge and was located on a lot donated by heirs of J.M. Lee and became the eventual site of the home of Daniel Ashley and Irene Houston Jewell. James Lee, the son of a Methodist minister, and his wife, Elizabeth Mahala Gordon Lee, were both interested in the religious and educational needs of the children of the community.
Elizabeth Lee, our church's namesake, she ended up raising some of her grandkids. And so in a lot of ways, that's carrying on that our church namesake and the tradition, the foundation upon which we stand.
Elizabeth operated a school in the front yard of her home, which is now called the Gordon Lee Mansion.
Two of our founding members was the Park family, Mr. and Mrs. Park. Their son, Hector Park, became a medical missionary to China. And so missions, loving on people really well, is part of our DNA.
In 1908, Chickamauga Methodist Church had grown in size large enough to give $100 to missions. In 1910, the original church building was moved to a plot of land near Crawfish Springs and the railroad tracks. In 1911, the Lee estate donated a new plot of land, and it was agreed upon to build a new church building. The new church building would be called the Elizabeth Gordon Lee Chapel. In 1913, during the pastorate of Reverend C.A. Hall, a new Gothic church building was completed. In 1918, 2 stained glass windows were installed in the sanctuary as Lee family memorials. In 1920, Reverend Harris became the first full-time minister of Elizabeth Lee. In 1922, under Reverend Harris, the church had its greatest year and added 133 new members. In 1923, the church conducted 2-week-long revivals and continued to grow its size.
My mother and dad ran a grocery store right across from the high school, and my grandmother would come by all dressed up with her little hat on and everything, and she was coming down to church for her circle meeting. So she was member of the women's circle, but every month she would do that, but she was dressed up to do it. Unlike today, we try to go as comfortably as we can. You'll look at Chickamauga, Georgia. It doesn't say it's Mr. and Mrs. J.A. Reed, just city. That's all you had to have in 1932, just city if you was mailed in Chickamauga. My great-grandmother's name is in the directory in 1932, and my grandmother's and my dad's. I remember my grandmother telling me that the train would come through and hobos would come on the train. Well, they would end up at her back door hungry, and whatever she could find, be it a biscuit or whatever, she would give it to them, out because they were hungry. And my grandmother believed in feeding people.
In 1929, as the stock markets crashed, the church approved the construction of the education building under the direction of Mr. Wheeler.
I joined the church in 1945. When I was a youth, we had what we call sub-district meetings, where we would go to other churches and meet with the young people about once a month.
In 1949, the church began construction on a new parsonage neighboring the sanctuary. The parsonage was completed and occupied in March 1950.
Now, we must be ready for a new danger, the atomic bomb. First, you duck, and then you cover.
President Kennedy has been shot by a would-be assassin.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
We were not allowed to come here. I never knew the South growing up other than the Jim Crow. So I lived in that era and came back to a whole different era living here.
In 1971, the elementary school, which is now the central office, it burned on, I believe, on a Sunday. And so on Monday, all of us elementary students got the day off, while the teachers and students and custodians and different individuals salvaged unburned books, cleaned desks, found a place for us to go to school, and Elizabeth Lee hosted 2 grades. So the fellowship hall was converted into the 6th grade, and a couple of the Sunday school rooms converted into the 4th grade. They don't know what it meant for us that went to church there to be a host school and to step up and to give your church over to the school. So it was wonderful. We've had a great partnership with the school for many years.
Well, we didn't have any air conditioner in the sanctuary. And so the doors were left open on Sunday morning for the air to circulate through in the windows. And we had a pastor that had a beagle that looked like the RCA dog. And on Sunday morning, sometimes he would just invite himself to church.
I love mission work. We help support one of the missionaries, Homer Morgan.
Later on, we began to support the education of a couple of young men, Samir Ghosh and Bishop Mondal in India.
Mr. Ghosh accomplished so much for Christianity in India that Reverend Morgan referred to him as India's Timothy. In 1974, in response to unemployment and economic struggles, the church played a leading role in establishing Operation Pantry, providing food and clothing to those in need. In the 1970s, the church started a dial-a-prayer ministry where you could call in to hear a different devotion each day.
We always had to dress up to go to church. I wouldn't have dreamed of not going to church in a dress or a skirt. I don't know when we started wearing pants to church, probably in the 70s sometime. We were very, very reverent in the sanctuary. You could hear a pin drop in the service. You know, if children misbehaved, they were taken out.
Elizabeth Lee has a long history of supporting students. Young people will come from all walks of life, and the church really embraces them.
Roger, roll, Discovery. Houston now controlling the flight of Discovery. You've got mail.
We are standing on the shoulders of the people who've come before us. We're standing on the shoulders of giants. So Dr. Warwick would stand outside the Yellow Deli. He would leave the church, go across the street, and stand outside the Yellow Deli every afternoon and tell children, do not go in there. If you go in there, I will let your parents know. But he had done his research and knew this isn't just a Christian organization. This is a cult. And he wanted to protect our community's children. He ended up receiving the Liberty Bell Award from the Lookout Mountain Judicial Circuit because of it. It was controversial, yes, but he stood for truth.
A member of our church at that time had been somewhere and saw a bell choir and thought that it was a good thing.
Enjoyed doing the Valentine parties for the seniors, even when I was well into my senior years.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. Get that picture within picture up. I'm going to go ahead and just push the sleep-wake button.
They embrace you for your whole life. Like, they don't just minister to you 6th through 12th grade. Like, the church reaches out to you and really loves you so well and so much that you feel like you can bring your families here. If you've been away at a job or college or whatever, this still feels like home. We had plans to open up the contemporary service. It was the consensus that we wanted to really focus on young families. Young families today are bombarded by stress, and we wanted to be that voice of calm and inviting them to know Jesus.
The well service is definitely what brought us here, and after a week we're like, well, let's go back for a second week, and here we are a year later, and what's kept us is the authenticity of people.
We love the well band. They're always just working diligently to provide new worship music and just being very sensitive to all ages in the congregation.
Like, the music is very, very good, and when they get us going and the spirit is there, like when all the music goes off and it's just the voices, like, it is special, and I genuinely just love it.
It's giving them a place to belong and new friends. The teachers come and volunteer after school's out, and it gives them a chance to see their teacher more one-on-one and in a different type of setting where they're thriving.
We knew we needed a leader totally focused on children, to lead them in their spiritual journey.
I hope that they can see Jesus in us and that they'll want to be a part of it and give their lives to Jesus if they haven't.
It helps me be mindful of other people and respect other people, and it really does help me daily.
We don't put any kind of lid on their talents just because they're young.
Everybody's welcome, no matter who you are, and it's very fun.
When someone first mentioned it to me when I was in high school, I remember being like, okay, we're gonna go hang out in front of the church after the game. Like, that's really what we wanna do with our time. And then I went, and it was like everybody was just having a good time listening to music, talking, eating, and yeah, then it was kind of a staple after that. We just always went.
Well, it's a safe place to go after a ball game. There's no alcohol involved and Christian music, and it's a good place to socialize after the game.
This article is from the AJC, written in 2012. After losing 55-8, the Southwest Atlanta Christian players began to pray on the sideline as they do after every sporting event. Soon, Gordon Lee players spontaneously came across the field to join them. They invited the players and family to join Gordon Lee's fifth quarter party that follows every home game, which includes food, music, and fellowship at a nearby Methodist church. The coach said, "At first, I thought I was in Remember the Titans. They had a live band and they were cooking. As soon as they saw us, fans stopped our cars and the whole town gave us a standing ovation. I wish we'd had a little more time. The food was great. It was a great list."
Elizabeth Lee does a great job of embracing biblical truths, but also staying relevant with how people just engage in the world.
We get that name Matthew's house from Matthew chapter 9, when Jesus was eating with tax collectors and sinners.
Some of my friends, even in town and just other places, when I tell them where to go to church, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's Elizabeth. Yeah, we drive by it all the time."
About 15 people began meeting week in and week out for a year to say, some of us have an addiction background, some of us don't. Some of us have an alcoholism background, some of us don't. But we are all committed to helping people experiencing healing in the name of Jesus. Right now as a church, we're saying, hey, how can we support the education of a bunch of kids in Liberia? We have always said, yes, we love our roots. We love the dirt underneath which our feet are situated. But at the same time, we have just as much of an obligation to serve the Lord and to tell people about Jesus, literally to the ends of the earth.
Elizabeth Lee has done a great job of staying true to traditional values at whatever cost that is, but also doing it in a way that is respectful and kind.
Jesus lays on people's hearts that they see a need and a vision, and the rest of us can get on the train and we can help pull the load and do it and make things happen.
I hope we keep up with the times and don't fall behind.
It's been a blessing to see my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren join this church.
And Elizabeth Lee is just a great place to call home.
A church that has young children and that has younger people and older people, there's a place for everybody.
And the hope of a bright future.
My hope for students 150 years from now is that they fall in love with Jesus so much that they just can't help themselves, that they tell others about him.
We've got a beautiful legacy of loving God and loving others just like Jesus for 150 years. And it's my prayer that never changes.